Hello, everyone. This is Adam Meister, the Bitcoin Meister, the Disrupt Meister. Welcome to This Week in Bitcoin. Yes, it's This Week in Bitcoin, not in Libra. Today is the first day of summer, at least in the Northern Hemisphere, June 21st. 2019. Strong hand, be a unique beast. Value your wealth in Bitcoin. We're going to talk about that today because there's some people I know, there's something going on in the fiat world right about now, some big round number. 1 Bitcoin equals 1 Bitcoin. That's my number. That's my stable coin, okay? Talking about stable coins, but we will talk about them. Your home for Bitcoin insider information. No fancy sets or graphics, just freezers. Okay, we've got quite a panel here today from all over these beautiful United States of America. We got David Bennett, we got Christian, and we've got Bitcoin Tina. Now, there was a lot of news this week concerning something called Libra, this coin by Facebook. It was huge news, so we cannot ignore it. And perhaps you haven't heard these guys take on Libra yet. And these guys are pretty freaking awesome. And I know a lot of you love to see and hear, or well, see on Twitter, Bitcoin Tina go wild upon non-Bitcoin subject matters. And he did go, he went wild on the Libra coin. So let's hear it in words, Bitcoin Tina. What is your take on Libra?
I have a very, can you hear me?
Yes, of course.
Good. I have a very simple take. I understand there are all sorts of extraneous issues with a coin that's going to track everyone, that's going to do with money, everything that Facebook is doing now without money. And so it's going to make all of that worse. But that aside, from my perspective, Libra is wonderful from a Bitcoin perspective. And why is that? Because Libra is going to do a few things. Most people, when they look at Bitcoin, like I told a woman about this earlier this week, very smart woman, very sophisticated financially, has a very high-end finance job, deals with real estate finance, very, very smart lady, and telling her you have to own Bitcoin. Oh, that monopoly money? I said it's not monopoly money. And I sent her a bunch of stuff. And you know the problem with sending people stuff on Bitcoin. You know, you send them like 400 YouTubes, articles, podcasts, and they're like, oh my God, what is this? So you're inundated with stuff. And even then, you barely understand it. Libra is going to make the idea of quote unquote cryptocurrency respectable because all these people use Facebook. And that may be crazy, but there is some aspect of normalcy. Imagine what it was like when people first started flying. There were lots of people who were afraid to get in planes. There's still people afraid to get in planes. Driving cars. So that getting things to be normalized from people's perspective is a really huge deal. One cannot underestimate and minimize how important this is. Further, the coin is going to be accepted on exchanges. This is almost a certainty because it becomes much less useful. And if you create something and say, well, you can't spend it here and you can't spend it there. I mean, no, we know we can't spend it on drugs. I actually never did drugs, but you can't spend it on, things that are illegal. You probably can't buy it at your local porn site. You can't spend it on these things, but you're not going to say you can't. I mean, you could in theory, so you're not going to spend it on a crypto exchange. But once you start doing that, and we do have in the financial system choke points. So they could use choke points. You might not be able to buy all kinds of things with it. Although that starts to make it a lot less useful. And I see Libra as being a Silicon Valley attack on the banking system, because it's going to take a lot of payments and transactions away from banks and give them to this large organization, which is then going to take that information and track it. So that's a huge advantage because a lot of people are going to consider Bitcoin. And I make the argument that everybody loves money. And I also argue that the primary reason that people buy Bitcoin is all related to price appreciation. Most people coming into Bitcoin do not worry about all the things that we know Bitcoin can do. They don't care. They want to make money. Most people are fiat maximalists, and they start that way, and that's okay. It takes time to learn to become a Bitcoin maximalist. Nobody's born being a Bitcoin maximalist. So they're going to come into it, and this is going to give them an on-ramp. And on-ramps are critical. We saw in 2017 how probably the lack of on-ramps. I mean, I remember I started buying in late 2017, like September-ish, October-ish. It was a whole big pain in the neck to sign up for all these different exchanges. You had to submit a picture of yourself with your ID, and it was just this really long, slow process. On-ramps are a pain. And nowadays we have on-ramps like Square Cash. You'll ultimately have on-ramps like Libra. Just the more and more on-ramps, the easier it is to buy Bitcoin. And this is a really big and a really important deal. So I see this as a huge positive. So that's one. Second is Libra by its structure is like Bitcoin going to be a tax event when you buy it and spend it. You're going to have a basis. It's going to have it's going to have more than just the US dollar in it. We can assume that it probably has at a minimum the dollar, the euro, and the yen. Let's forget about anything else. Well, that means it's going to fluctuate. That means it's going to be a taxable event to start spending any amounts over some de minimis amounts. So that becomes a problem too. So Facebook, I'm sure, and the other organizations will lobby to ask for laws which make it spendable. Those laws are going to affect all cryptocurrencies. I doubt very much they're going to say, well, this one's really special. We're not going to permit the others. They're not going to write laws like that. That seems not reasonable to me. It's just not how the world tends to work. So that's a really good thing. So they're going to help. I see it that there are a lot of things that make the battles for Bitcoin much easier to fight, because you've got this big organization with tons of money that's going to go battle them. Now people say, well, Facebook isn't well liked, or there are problems with it. And there are tons of problems with it, and I don't disagree with that. But it makes it easier for people to buy Bitcoin. And to me, that's a really big deal. So I'm okay with it.
Yeah, I love that summary. You went through all of the crypto noise. You got rid of the noise. You boiled it down there. It's a wonderful thing. I think it's wonderful. I mean, I know not to mess around with it. If it gets people on board, that is great. I let them do what they're going to do over there. It doesn't affect me very much. Christian, you're in the belly of the beast, though. You're located right near Facebook. What's your take on this?
All the Libra like Twitter action going on at the beginning of the week was just like so annoying that I actually had to mute Libra on Twitter.
That's crypto noise there, baby. I don't blame you. There was so much stuff.
It was just too much. It was too much.
Yeah.
But I tend to agree with Tina on this. I tend to think that almost everything in terms of like altcoins and stuff like that is ultimately good for Bitcoin. So I guess the only thing I could really add here is everything that Tina said was assuming that Libra actually succeeds. And I definitely don't think that that's a given. There's people like tweeting things like, this is the greatest achievement ever. Like, it seems a lot like the ICOs where they make an announcement and then everyone thinks it's going to take over the world. Like, I just don't think that happens very easily. And granted, of course, Facebook and all these other companies are definitely in a position to do something incredible in terms of distribution. I think it remains to be proven if they can bootstrap, any sort of like monetary desire or need for the Libra token and standard and whatever it is. So I'm watching. It's going to be interesting.
You've got a great point. They could mess this up. It's not guaranteed at all. I mean, because you're right. There are a lot of people like, this is the greatest thing since sliced cheese, basically type tweets. But no, it's not even real yet. It's all theoretical. Let's see it. Big corporations can mess things up. Big corporations do a good job. There's a lot of potential, obviously, a lot of potential that people are excited about. David Bennett, your take.
Well, I kind of lost my wagon when all that news started coming up, but I didn't lose it so bad that I muted Libra because I was going to need to figure out what, exactly what was going on. But it's not like this was a surprise. There had been talks about this stuff going on for what, months, or was there like rumblings like almost a year ago, I think. In either event, it's not like this was a surprise, but what did surprise me was the reaction, especially like, I just saw a bunch of fawning. I mean, just absolute outright fawning. And some of them were from like what I would consider OG Bitcoiners. And I was like, I don't understand it. I don't understand the sentiment. There should be a lot more vitriol going on here, because it's not like we actually think that the great guts and feathers of the Bitcoin community think Facebook is anything but damned evil, right? So I couldn't understand it, and I couldn't wrap my head around the fervor here. And the more that I looked at it, the more I started kind of running along the lines of what Christian and Bitcoin Tina are saying. I'm not convinced at all that it's going to work, but I'm also not convinced at all that if it does work, that it's going to swing in our favor. And it's not that I think it won't, it's that possibility by itself just kind of gives me the willies. And I don't think it's going to, I don't even think necessarily that it competes directly with Bitcoin. Tina was talking about, competing with banks, but I think it would be more competing with the retail sector of banks and not as much central banks. And I would much rather see something hurt central banks than retail banks. And what I mean by retail bank is the guy that gives me a home loan. I'm not going up to the discount window at the Fed and doing that. I'm getting that from a guy that's down the block, right? I don't have as much problems with the small, tiny, like either federal credit unions or branch banks or anything like that. My problems come in as we get into like sizes like Wells Fargo, Bank of America, central banks, European Central Bank, Japanese Central Bank, that kind of stuff. And this particular advent kind of seems to want to play nice with central banks and crush retail banking. And I'm not sure what the landscape of the aftermath of that looks like. So so I'm sitting in this interstitial space where I can see what, my co-guests are saying is just, well, I mean, I see it and I hope it does that. I really do. I mean, this like the altcoin thing needs to go away. ICOs, I've just been dealing with that stuff for so long. It's just become so annoying. And I saw another one the other day where somebody, can't even remember the name of the coin, but it went on auction. It was either yesterday or the day before. No, I think it was on Tuesday because I covered it on my Wednesday pod, is that they got a $24 billion valuation by selling this brand new ICO. And I'm like, the stupid hasn't left yet. And there's a lot of it. And it's that amount of stupid combined with a form of central bank corporate coin that's what gives me the willies. So that's where I'm at on it.
Now, Christian wanted to respond here. What do you got to say, Christian?
So 2 things. I think maybe one reason people were fawning is just because, like, think about how far Bitcoin has come and how much Bitcoin has really already changed the world. I think people are just really impressed by that. The fact that all of these companies and Facebook are like creating this like, thing in Bitcoin to image, that's really what it is. So, I mean, I think that Bitcoin has already changed the world a tremendous amount and it's going to continue to. Yeah, I mean, that's mostly my point.
Yeah,
that's the only thing I could add.
I don't disagree with that at all. I'm just like a consummate skeptic, but I don't know. I mean, it's just, I think you're right. I really do. It's just that, man, I've had so many times where I thought something was right and just turned around and it was not right. So I guess what it is like, I just don't, I just don't want to, ring karma's doorbell I don't want karma to answer.
You're saying that the stupid, there's a lot of stupid in the space, quote unquote. I mean, that's just the way of the free market. People can do what they want to do. If they're still, if they're interested in buying what is now initial exchange offerings, then they're falling for it again.
Yes.
Would you feel more? There are other FANG companies out there: Facebook, Apple, whatever all of them are. Right? Google, Netflix. What's the other A? Apple,
Amazon.
Amazon. How could I forget that? I think a lot of people are saying one of them will do the same thing as Facebook. I mean, what will you feel like then? What will it be like then? I think it'll be Christian's point that Bitcoin has come so far that the biggest corporations on earth are trying to mimic it in a centralized fashion.
Yeah, and that's the part that I actually do feel kind of good about. But like I said, I'm just skeptical. But
skeptical of what?
I'm just a consummate skeptic that we may be wrong, and like to keep on guard for like any indications that this thing may be going in a direction that we didn't think
maybe wrong. Maybe wrong about what? I don't understand what you're saying we're wrong about.
That it will onboard more people to Bitcoin and not just be a sort of like a sink for people to stay in, that relative coin. And I think it was you that actually.
Well, so why do people buy Bitcoin?
In my opinion, it's store of value.
What does that mean?
I don't like losing my value. And ever since I've been in Bitcoin, I have actually never lost any value. To me, it's for 10 years, for the 5 or 6 years that I've been in, it's been the absolute safest thing that I've seen.
Right now,
and it also gains, but it also has this tendency.
It's not store of value right now. It's a speculative asset right now. It's not store of value right now. And it is an asset which has had remarkable return. People buy Bitcoin because it goes up. That's probably, I think, north of 99% of the reason most people buy it.
I wouldn't dispute that, but the reason I buy it is store of value. It also has a tendency to go up. Okay. But now when I'm dollar cost averaging in, I'm like sitting here going, I'm pretty sure that $50 that I DCA'd is going to remain at least $50, but it will probably rise. So I sort of like have two reasons to do it: store of value and the fact that it has this tendency to continuously go up. But
it doesn't really have store value properties yet, because it's not operating where it's the one and only money in the world, which is where the value of all global production goes into Bitcoin, and it maintains the value, which is different from fiat. It currently is, and will be for a while, a speculative asset which trades very aggressively, and because it is a fixed supply, will tend to go up as demand increases. And I argue again, because of technology and the nature of Bitcoin's technology is an exponential technology, that drives demand. And that drive of demand with a fixed supply tends to make things like a tube of toothpaste with the top closed and a pin in it, and an elephant stepping on it. And I mean, it could go squish, but it just sends that thing very far, and it tends to, people buy it because it goes up, and it goes up very aggressively. And I suspect that even you, if you're actually being honest with yourself, don't really buy it for a store of value. You really buy it because you want to make a lot of money with it. And I think you may not be totally honest with yourself when you say that. I mean, there's nothing wrong with making money. I think the fact that Satoshi intended that it be something that goes up, because if Bitcoin were at $1, none of us would be sitting here talking about it right now, and none of us would own it right now.
I'm going to bring up one thing you said, Tina. Well, you were wondering about David's trepidation about the whole situation. And David, is it that you are worried that all these people are going to onboard into Facebook coin, into Libra, and are just going to stick there, and then it's going to somehow surpass Bitcoin? That it might be some nightmare type of situation for Bitcoin?
No.
Is that your worry?
Well, not a nightmare. Like just kind of like a retard, like a potential retardation.
Okay.
And I mean that not in a derogatory.
I understand.
Like just like a slowing thing. And and there's a particular sentiment that I agree with about, like, all they have to do is sit there and look at a chart of Bitcoin versus their Facebook coin, and all of a sudden they start thinking, yeah, we may have to go ahead and trade this in for Bitcoin. So from that standpoint, like, I am coming around. I'm just doing it slowly.
Well, here, but hold on a second. But David, here's, to me, this is actually a really, really big deal, because buying Bitcoin, I mean, I've been trading stocks for a really long time. I mean, I'm in my late 50s. I've been buying stocks since I'm out of college. I've been buying stocks a really, really long time. And I've opened up a lot of brokerage accounts over the years. It's hard buying Bitcoin. I mean, it's really hard. It's a difficult process. There's nothing easy about it. This is not a trivial gating factor. There's a lot you have to do. There's nothing easy about Bitcoin. And when you make something much easier to do, many more people will do it. And they're going to be persuaded into trying it because it may be the thing to do, and it's fun and it's popular and people are driven by that. But after they own it, you kind of look around, and a friend of theirs says, "Oh, I bought a little bit of that Bitcoin." God damn it! I spent $100,000. You know, I bought myself $1,000 worth. It was expensive, but it's at $1 million now. So, you know, I made 10 times my money. It's, and whatever the numbers are, they're going to be people that are going to buy some, and they're going to be thrilled that they're making money in it. And they're going to want to copy their friends. I traded stocks in the 90s, and it was a wild, wild, wild scene. I underestimated it. There is nothing like, there's a guy, Richard Russell, who passed away a number of years ago. He wrote something called the Dow Theory Letters, and he used to write, "There's no fever like gold fever." And people would go crazy for gold, making money in gold. Gold drove people crazy. Bitcoin is that exponentially. And I continue to say, in the coming bull market that we are in the next several years, there will be many people who lose their minds. There'll be CEOs that lose their minds. There'll be bank presidents, CEOs, and chairman of the board, and all sorts of. It may be Facebook that loses its mind versus Bitcoin. There may be a lot of people who lose their minds when they understand what they are dealing with at Bitcoin. Bitcoin's a very special thing. It has some really amazing properties that people simply don't understand. And it's a very powerful force. And I get your skepticism, but I am not afraid of it. I totally embrace it. I think it's a wonderful thing, because making that gating factor easier without having to jump through hoops, and they're going to make it easy. I mean, that's what they're going to do, face facts. Now, the risk is that it doesn't happen, because Maxine Waters, the chairman of the Financial Services Committee in Washington, D.C., in the House of Representatives, is going to drag Facebook's, drag them in front of her committee and say, "What are you guys doing?" So I guarantee you that Representative Waters Chairman Waters got an awful lot of complaints from many banks, or Chairwoman Waters, I don't know what the right phrase is, but she got a lot of complaints from a lot of financial institutions who said, "What is this thing? What is this thing?" And I'm sure she's, you know, there are issues, there are banking issues that people are worried about. If you're tracking the equivalent of social credit scores now with money, and there have been a long history in the United States of things like redlining, which people may or may not know about, all kinds of uses of the financial system to make purchases of assets more difficult. She's actually not wrong to be concerned about that. Chairwoman Waters is right to be concerned. I mean, what if people have a hard time? Now, this is not a credit thing. It's not credit granting. But these are issues that the House and the Senate are going to be rightly concerned about. So there is a possibility from that perspective, regulatory perspective, from a political perspective, that the process is halted or slowed down. But you have a lot of companies that are involved in this thing with a very, very, very big money. So I'm not really concerned that that's really going to be much of an issue. I forget how many companies there are, but you're talking about an awful lot of lobbying power and influence. So this is going to be a done deal. The odds of this not happening, are pretty low. I'd bet on it happening. I would not bet against it.
I want to remind everyone to pound that like button and check out the link section, first of all, because all these guys are listed below. You got to follow them on Twitter and see what they've been talking about, what events they're doing, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, follow me on Twitter at TECHBALT. I want to wrap up this topic with, I got a question for Christian, because you are in San Francisco. You're in the area over there. Is there a different feel about this? Are people really talking about it? Unique in the belly of the beast take on this?
So I think it's kind of hard for me to say that accurately because I'm very much in a Bitcoin bubble. But my girlfriend, she's, normal tech person. And from what she was telling me last night, like it definitely was something that people were talking about in her office. And people talk about Bitcoin in her office too and other cryptocurrencies. So I mean, people who are paying attention to things are paying attention to this for sure. But in the Bitcoin bubble, as you guys know, everyone was talking about this. So we're definitely paying attention. All
right. Good. I just wanted to get that, hear what's going on out. Well, I guess I'm out west now, up north of, up in the valley, up in Silicon Valley and San Francisco. Okay. We've talked about Libra. I think everyone gets the feel of that, and we shall see what happens if it actually does really happen. Now, I did want to share a tweet by Bitstein. He says, Bitcoin sneaks up on people who think they can time the market. I like that because there are a lot of people these last 4 months or so who thought they could time everything. And as this show goes on the air, I don't like to talk about fiat price, but I'm going to just tell everyone it's getting close to this big round number. And soon in all the titles of all the videos, there's going to be all this clickbait about that big round number. And yeah, who would have guessed that if you try to time it, you're going to get wrecked. So for me, it's just another reminder. If it does get that big round number in the next 30 minutes, which would be hilarious, yeah, to just value your wealth in Bitcoin. Try to get more Bitcoin. You never know if it's going to hit that big round number or if it's going to go down to $3,000 all of a sudden. Just I wanted to, we couldn't have a show where the fiat price wasn't slightly mentioned there. Anyone have thoughts on that before, timing the market and all the chart? Tina, any thoughts on charts, Chartist, and people who clearly must have predicted that on this first day of summer that it would hit a big round number?
I did not think it would be at $9,900 in June back in January. I was on your show then, wasn't I?
Yeah, when I was in Israel. Yeah, it was. Yeah.
I did not think I'm so happy we're at $9,900, but I didn't think we'd be at $9,900. I mean, I was thinking to myself, well, where could this be at the end of this year? Well, you got the halving, and okay, where's it going to be then? And I was thinking, okay, maybe it can be at 20,000 come the end of 2020. And I'll be honest, at this point, I'm thinking you could be at some pretty shockingly high numbers come the halving. Like, well,
my thing for you is since you've been in markets for many, many years, as you alluded to, and you've seen many people try to make you've seen technical analysis of all sorts of different financial products. What's your take on the people who were just addicted to these charts all along and now are like still waiting for it to go down to 2,000 to buy back in again? I've seen you comment on these type of things. That's
okay, a few things. I've made a lot of mistakes myself over the years, and I remember some trading back in the 90s as an example, and I'll talk about that in a second. But let's talk about trading for a second. What I think most traders don't understand, particularly young traders, I was having a conversation with a guy the other day about this who, I don't know him personally. He claims he's very successful. I believe he wouldn't lie to me. Why would he lie that he's very successful? So let's assume he's very successful. And I said to him, I have the view that What makes a trader a really, really good trader is not their ability to read charts. Makes a trader a really good trader is the ability for them to manage money, manage their risk. So it's understanding when to put a position on, when to take a position off, how aggressive to be in the position. This is what it takes to be successful. Stanley Druckenmiller is one of the most successful investors ever, who worked for a man by the name of George Soros for many years, said that he was quoting George Soros, I believe. I forget the statistics that Soros said about his wins versus his losses, but he said what made him good and successful was when he was right, he piled on the size. And when he was wrong, he got out. And that's a very hard thing for people to do. It's a really, really, really hard thing for people to do. And that's really the trick to making big money. And that's what makes him a very, very, very rich man. A lot of people think when they go into investing and trading that they're going to be Warren Buffett, or they're going to be Paul Tudor Jones, who's from, who made a fortune in the crash in '87 and made billions of dollars, or they're going to be Stanley Druckenmiller, or they're going to be George Soros, or they're going to be whoever. And the fact of the matter is, those few people are few and far between. And from a trading perspective, you never read about the guys who started with $100,000 and turned it into $1,000, and you never hear about the people who lose, because people only talk about success. There's a huge success bias. So you think, oh, this is easy. There's nothing easy about trading. It's one of the hardest things in the world to do. And investing is hard too. Investing in the stock market has had the benefit that you have had a rising market for many, many years. A lot of this, I think, is contributed to by Fed policy, but that's a separate issue, separate discussion. You can go back prior to these very aggressive policies. You did have rising markets over long, long time horizons, punctuated by periods of flattish or range-bound markets and downturns. But as an investor in stocks, if you do your work, if you understand how to evaluate a business, you can buy things at good prices and they can appreciate over time if you know how to balance your portfolio. Investing and trading are not the same thing. So I think that there are people out there who make a living off of selling trading services. I too have bought some of these types of things in stocks over the years. I subscribed to various things, thinking that they were going to help me and be a panacea. And they're not. Learning how to invest, learning how to trade is very, very hard. And just because it's relatively easy to do doesn't mean you can't get very hurt doing it. And most people will get very hurt doing it. You need to, I would suggest, learn as much about things as you can. Bitcoin's even harder than most things, because Bitcoin's actually really interesting. You never had, in stocks, you never had something like a Bitcoin community where you've got people who are willing to take their time and actually teach you, if you showed an interest, teach you how to understand this thing, how to look at it, why they thought it was worthwhile, why they thought it was interesting. Many people have a pretty conservative bent in Bitcoin. I may not. And you can learn a lot from them. Most in the altcoin space, most of those people have huge marketing dollars. Bitcoin doesn't have marketing dollars. And I think people underestimate how hard this thing is. In trading Bitcoin, there are people who make a good living off of selling their services. And trading is very, very hard. I spoke with a young guy who was following, I had a discussion with him the other day. He's a 20-year-old. And he's following a guy who everybody knows. And I'm not going to name him. And I said, so, are you long Bitcoin? He says, well, I sold most of it. I have a little bit. I'm mostly in cash. And I can't remember the price was 8,000 something. I said, oh, so where'd you sell it? Oh, right about here. I don't know if that's true or it's not true where he sold it. And I have no idea. There's no way for me to verify this. I said, oh, I would think about, getting long. He said, oh, I'm convinced it's going to go a lot lower. I said, be careful, it could. I mean, markets can do anything. There are lots of reasons. I mean, if the stock market goes down 40 or 50%, there's a really good chance that Bitcoin's going to go down a lot too. So I wouldn't argue with that. It could be right. I mean, there are a lot of reasons for stuff to happen. But, as things are right now, I'm a little dubious of that. I think that it looks like we're in a bull market, and I think this market could run quite a while and reach levels that are pretty surprising.
Well, let me tell you something. A 20-year-old, I don't like to hear that story from a 20-year-old. A 20-year-old should just be treating it as a savings mechanism. Just use it as a savings account. That's unfortunate. And to avoid all these trading nightmare, it is hard. 90% of traders lose. That's why on this channel, if you're new here, the Meister's not about trading anything. Buy and hold, strong hand, never let go of that stuff. But again, there's a lot of temptation, especially when we hit these round numbers. All sorts of newbies are going to be coming in. But that a 20-year-old is playing around. That's it. He should just take the easy thing for a 20-year-old to do is just stack sats, as they say. Just keep on selling, and when you're 40 years old, you'll be in great shape. All right, other panel members, do you have any? Again, I don't like getting into too much fiat stuff here. Any opinions on what's going on? Things that Bitcoin Tina just said, Christian.
Number go up. Let's go.
And how about you, David?
There is always a question in my mind. I don't trade because I don't think I would be good at it. I would leave that to professionals, people who know about this kind of stuff. I have a chart in front of me. I have Trading View up so I can look at it, but I don't trade this stuff. Now, that said, one of the things that I wonder since I've been looking at charts, just looking, I'm not drawing lines or tridents or whatever, but one of the questions that I've come to really ask myself is, as I look at this chart, and it doesn't matter if it's a Bitcoin chart or an Apple chart or anything, I always used to think a chart was telling me something other than what I think it might be telling me now. So my question now is, like, when I look at these things, exactly what am I looking at? And one of the components that I think I might be looking at is Hivemind, or mass psychology at work. And Tina, I'd like to actually get your opinion on whether or not that's just straight up wrong, or if there's something to that. Because like I said, back in the day, I used to think charts were telling me something different, like something more fundamental, something less emotional, something more credible. You get what I'm saying?
Sort of, not really. But I have a story. I have a story that relates to this. I think you'll find interesting. I was listening to a guy named Ben Hunt, and I forget his Twitter handle, like Epsilon Theory or something. He told this really interesting story. He told a story that I think he was a quant, Ben Hunt. I'm not positive. And he was telling a story that a very rich investor / trader came to him, I think in the 90s. Could have been a little later than that. And he wanted him to help him figure out some computer algorithms and programs to do the following. The investor had the idea that he actually wanted to fulfill the pattern and then trade against it. So if a pattern was, let's say, an ascending triangle, fulfill that pattern of an ascending triangle, cause the thing to break out, and then to slam the stock on the downside very hard to break and get a failed pattern and profit going against it, fulfilling the pattern and then breaking the pattern. Because he had the idea that he had a lot of capital to play with and that other people didn't have. And they could actually, in theory, I used to say, if what you expect to happen doesn't happen, there's high information content in that. And that came with either fundamental or technical analysis. So it basically is saying, okay, you expect XYZ to happen in the event that this pattern, trades out. A head and shoulders should break down. If it doesn't break down, it breaks up. There's information in that. If an ascending triangle doesn't go up and goes down, there's information in that. And this guy was a very sophisticated guy who said, I'm I'm going to fool everybody. I'm going to put the market on tilt. You know what tilt is in gambling?
Well, I remember from pinball.
Pinball, yeah.
No, but when you on tilt, it's basically sort of the same thing. You get people just go and do the wrong thing. You get them all going, and they're going one way, then all of a sudden everything goes the other way, and there's totally off sides. In gambling, that's how people really lose big. And I found that really interesting. So maybe that answers what you're saying. Markets are very, very, very hard, and trying to understand. One guy put it this way: if you don't know who you are when you go in to start investing and trading, you're going to find out pretty quickly, but it can be a very expensive lesson. And we think that it's easier than it is because there's easy access to it. But it's not easy. I mean, you're going in and you're getting in the ring with a prize fighter. You're getting in the ring with the best mixed martial artist. You're getting in there in the ring with the heavyweight champion of the world or the lightweight. You're getting in the ring with really good people, smart people, much smarter than you, people who know much more than you do. If you don't understand that you're fish food, if you're the lowest sea life there is. I'm plankton. I'm nothing. So you have to understand what you are, what you know. I mean, news happens. I'm going to be the last to know, not the first to know. So trading on that is very hard. So you need to understand who you are and what you're about, and you need to understand, you know much less than you think you do. You know much less than you think. So for me, in Bitcoin, I spend most of my time trying to run thought experiments. What would things look like? How should things play out? Like Facebook, like Libra coin. I try to make heads or tails out of it. Markets may respond differently when the news breaks, but I want to understand how it's really going to play itself out. And so that's why I do these thought experiments. That's why I try to think about what makes sense to me. And that's what I tweet about, because if I can't tell a story that makes sense to me and is reasonable and rational, I don't get it. I don't understand it. Now, there's a lot of stuff I don't know or understand. I mean, there's a lot of technical stuff as far as the technical aspects of Bitcoin, where forget it. I don't know anything about this, and I have to rely on other people. Read what they say. They're right, because my opinion is less than worthless.
You bring up a very good point about if you don't know who you are, you're going to find out real quick if you start trading. And I'm going to tie all this together right now. That's why young dudes don't know who they are yet. So they really shouldn't be getting into this type of thing, because they're going to find out the hard way. So again, if you're youthful, if you're watching this right now, it seems glamorous. You only hear the good stories, as Bitcoin Tina said. You don't hear the guys talking about how he turned $100,000 into 1,000, or you rarely hear that. And save, hold, strong hand. That's my take. But there'll be a lot. And yeah, don't buy those courses either. My Lord, just that simplest course, and I give it away for free, is just buy and hold. That's the course that I take. And for young people especially, I think when you become a little older, you'll be like, whew, I'm glad I didn't know what I was doing then. I was just a wild Kenny Rogers gambler, or whatever, Kenny whoever. Okay, so moving on from these from fiat and from Facebook. Well, let's get another F topic. Florida. A Florida city paid a $600,000 Bitcoin ransom to hackers who took over its computers. And it's a massive alarm bell for the rest of the U.S. Now, okay, that's a pretty clickbaity title right there. A massive alarm bell for the rest of the U.S. It says, it was Riviera. Ooh, what happened to Riviera Beach? It was Riviera Beach, and they have now approved to pay them this money, while Baltimore never paid the ransom of $76,000. And it has cost Baltimore City $18 million. Now, I bring this up because it was a clickbaity type of title, and they're trying to scare people about bureaucracies being hacked, and then being extorted for Bitcoin. But I see it as an opportunity because bureaucracies, they're not run very well. What they should have done, and I've said this a while, they should have had an insurance fund all along in Bitcoin just in case something like this happened, so they could just be done with it and pay off the hackers and be free and not go the Baltimore route. So this Florida city, again, what's the name? Riviera Beach has gone a little bit of a different route. They weren't proactive. They're just like, okay, we're hacked. We're going to pay the ransom. They're not trying to like stretch it out like Baltimore. So I wanted to hear. I sent this article out to you guys. What do you have to say about it, David?
I was really surprised that the price differential between Riviera Beach and Baltimore was. Almost like 6 times or more than 6 times the amount. I figured it would be kind of flipped. Baltimore is not like a small place.
Yeah, but because I think the reason is because it's a generic Russian hacker somewhere, Eastern Europe. He sends out as many as he can, and it's over time. So at one point he was demanding 10 Bitcoin, and then at one time he was doing 8, and it just looks, okay. They're just giving the wealth. They're saying how much it is in terms of fiat, but it might be the same amount in Bitcoin. In fact, and they don't know what cities they're targeting. They're targeting every freaking weak IT environment they can get into. I mean, that's one of the difference in prices. But continue, sorry.
Okay, but honestly, I'm honestly surprised that this isn't happening like every day, because from this story, it's saying that an employee somewhere in the sheriff's department opened up the attachment that came with the email. And when you're talking about employee ranks of the hundreds or thousands, or something like Baltimore's got to be 10,000 and more, the fact that this doesn't happen every single day is kind of beyond my comprehension, because I used to work at a hospital with Perot Systems. We were their contractor IT guys, right? And so they didn't have their own IT department, so they just called up Perot Systems, and they said, yeah, sure, we'll send out a team. And then they ended up being resident, and then I went to go work for them. And one night I got this call from my brother-in-law at the time, or my brother-in-law, who we were both working there at the time. And he said, look, it's all hands on deck. You got to come down here. And I'm like, what? And he's like, just come down. It turns out that the entire hospital had been infected with one of these things, but there was no ransom attached. There was nothing. It was just malicious. And I get the feeling that gone are the days of just malicious attempts. And we're now looking square in the face of every single one of these is going to have a ransom attached, which kind of can spin us back to Facebook coin. Because if all of a sudden you got a whole bunch of people who are going, oh, this Facebook coin isn't all that bad, and then every hacker under the sun compromises their system and they never ask for Facebook coin, they just ask for Bitcoin. I wonder if that, is a possible catalyst.
Oh, I like that. Well, I will. You're saying you wonder why this doesn't happen every day. I think it is going to happen every day. I think it's a growing problem. It's a growing issue because you've got tremendous organizations. It only takes one weak link to open an email, and then the organization hasn't updated their system for a while. We're going to see more and more of this. So that's I bring it up is that these bureaucracies should admit they're inefficient. Or they should pay for the best IT possible, but they're not going to do that. So why not get an insurance fund? Just buy some Bitcoin now, so later you'll deal with this. And again, in the past, I had read that there were some organizations that maybe it was a bank, I don't know what it was, that did have stashes of Bitcoin just in case they got into a situation like this. So I mean, again, this doesn't paint a pretty picture for Bitcoin for the normies out there. Oh, it's used for extortion. It's used for hacks, but it is it's something to consider if you're a big organization to get your little fund now, so you don't go the Baltimore route where you try to refuse, and it costs you 50 times the amount that they wanted originally. And still, I mean, I am from Baltimore. It's still not there. It's still not, things aren't working over there yet. There's been all these workarounds and stuff. I mean, they're still in a very bad situation.
Hey, well, Adam, on that note, it kind of dawns or presents itself as a possible business opportunity for a company to do an insurance fund that businesses can just buy as like an insurance policy, and the actual business actually holds the keys and say, hey, we got hacked. And then you call your insurance agent and they like 2 or 3 multi-sig, and all of a sudden you're clear to go. And they do. It's almost like a case for the CASA guys.
You're missing the most important part of the insurance fund. That's not why insurance fund is good.
Okay. I like this insurance idea.
Yeah, but that's not why.
Because it's like Bitcoin.
That's not why it's good. It has nothing to do with Bitcoin. Insurance fund is actually a really good idea, but you're not talking about why it's a good idea. Insurance companies, when you take on big insurance, the insurance company, before they write up your insurance, so let's say you are a big company, you buy insurance for whatever, for fire. What are they going to do? They're going to inspect your facilities. And they're going to say, you have a problem here, 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 fix it. So insurance fund is actually a great idea, because what the insurance company is going to do is, when you go try to get that insurance for insuring against hacks like this and malware attacks, insurance companies are going to send people over who know a thing or two. You're going to say, oh, well, this is a big problem. We're not going to insure you because you have a problem here, and 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 your people need to be trained with this. And what's going to happen is, what's not happening right now, is that because cities are so poorly run and operating on shoestrings to a certain extent in some places, they're going to be forced to spend money and time and effort protecting themselves against cyber attacks, because the insurance companies won't insure them. So that's why the insurance idea is actually a really good idea.
Yeah,
just for the audit?
That's what I'm saying.
Just for the audit? Yeah, because because they're not running their show properly. They're running themselves in ways which is absurd.
This is true.
If you're going to buy yourself insurance to protect yourself, the insurance companies they're not in the business of just paying out ransomware. They're going to want you to improve. They want to mitigate their risk. And so in the process of risk mitigation, they're going to send out people to inspect your systems and say, you need to fix these things because you're very exposed here. And they are clearly very exposed. And so an insurance idea is actually an outstanding one, but not for the reasons you're saying.
All right. I want to hear, Christian, your take on the Florida situation.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the only thing I'll add here is it's just really incredible to see what Bitcoin is doing in 2 different ways. First and foremost, Bitcoin is the currency of choice for these hackers because they trust it the most, because it has a reputation, because of Lindy, because of all the things the maximalists say that it is, the most viable cryptocurrency. So one, it is money more than any other crypto by far. And then on the flip side, you see that at one point there was very little consequence of having terrible systems. And now because of Bitcoin, there's massive consequences for having terrible systems. So this is something that Ansel Lindner says a lot, and I'm a big Ansel Lindner fan, but he says that Bitcoin aligns incentives. And I definitely think that that is true here and in many other cases. I mean, I think the existence of Bitcoin is going to make all this stuff better, because if you don't fix your stuff, you're going to get screwed.
Pound that like button. I like that. I like that summary of the situation. And yeah, they're not asking for Ethereum. They're asking for the Bitcoin. I wonder why. All right. But yes, pound that like button, everyone. I wanted to say, Robert just sent $12 in the super chat. He said, will there be more crypto dividends during the Bitcoin bull market? Oh yeah. Of course, because people are going to be trying to create other altcoins. They're going to want to give them out to the greatest holders on earth, the strongest hands on earth, the Bitcoin holders. So yeah, they'll come back again. Everybody in China will be making their own crypto dividends soon enough again. But hey, it's interest for the people who own their Bitcoin. You get free coins for these crypto dividends from the airdrops and the forks. And you come here, you'll hear all about them. So let's talk. We're getting toward the end of the show here, but I know Bitcoin Tina, you wanted to bring up India. What did you have to say about India? I'm very curious.
I think that if they were to make Bitcoin illegal in India with severe penalties, I believe that what would happen is some people might sell initially. I think you would wind up with an extreme premium on the difference between Indian price and global price, which means that people who are willing to engage in criminal activity and take that risk will have an opportunity to make a lot of money by engaging in it. And I think the net effect will be to create a lot of forced hodlers, because there are many people who would still want to buy it. They'll buy Bitcoin, and then they won't engage in speculative activity or trading activity or trade activity with their Bitcoin, because they will simply they'll simply hodl it to not get swept up in any kind of legal enforcement action by the state. So I think that it might make people more interested in Bitcoin than they might have been otherwise. And I think it won't dissuade people from buying as a result. I really don't believe that. And you're going to have people, because I believe it'll go to a premium in India, you're going to have people who are going to be actively educating people about why they should buy Bitcoin, because they're going to make a lot of money engaging in that illegal activity. So I think it'll be counterproductive. And I think what it means is, if India were able to create a forced hodl of 500,000 Bitcoin globally, where an additional 500,000 Bitcoin are not moving and just remaining in cold storage, or whatever the number is, you're going to take a lot of Bitcoin out of global supply, which will tend to make the upward trajectory in prices go ever higher. So I think it becomes counterproductive for doing this. And countries like India, countries like China, countries like Russia, countries like Venezuela, people understand that they engage in black market activity, and they recognize they have to when they do. And very often these things in China, you still have a lot of Bitcoin activity that hasn't really diminished in any significant way. There are lots of people who are very interested in that, and I don't think it'll diminish it in India or in Russia or in lots of these places.
Yeah, I like the forced hold theory. The bigger the country with I don't like seeing countries make things illegal, make Bitcoin illegal. But if a country where it was already popular did it, it would force a lot of Bitcoin to be held and kept off the market. That's a very good point. I wanted to say Crypto Angel sent $4.20 in the super chat. He said, over 80 watching, hit the like button, pound that like button. Crypto Angels down in Long Beach. Thanks for the 420, man. All right, you guys, do you have any thoughts on what Tina just said? I thought I saw someone was about to say something. Okay, any comments there? The two of you?
Sure.
Yes.
I'll say something. It's easier for governments to ban fiat than it is for them to ban Bitcoin.
It's a very, very good point. How about you, David? Any thoughts on that? Or I was going to ask you, actually, David, you and I, right before the show, we talked of the FATFA just came out and said all global crypto exchanges must now share customer data.
Yeah.
You know what? They could say what they want to say. There are going to be plenty of exchanges who aren't going to share there's all these decentralized ones that are popping up that don't share anything. Okay. I'll tell you right that they'll be oh yeah. Continue, please.
Jesse Powell comes to mind, Jess Powell from Kraken. Cause I can't remember. I think it was the New York FinCEN or the New York State group out there said, hey, all these exchanges in the United States are going to have to give us stuff. And Jesse Powell said, go fish. And as far as I know, he's like, we're just going to stop serving New York customers. And I can kind of see this kind of like maybe as a fractal, but right now the FATFA stuff is just guidance. And yes. I think the only way that that's going to impact is if any of the countries that listen to what these guys say actually turns it into laws. And that's a different story altogether.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I read stuff like this and I'm like, oh yeah, it's another Bitcoin killer, and it doesn't ever kill Bitcoin.
Well,
And
and that's the other thing. I think some people just like to talk about it because some people are obsessed with FUD and want to think, oh, this can't be true. Bitcoin can't be taken over. Here's the obstacle I've been waiting for all my life. Let me talk. I mean, there's literally guys out there on Twitter who get so much pleasure in talking about, proposed government interference. I mean, if you want to live your life like that, worrying about proposed government interference, be my guest. Whatever, you're not in motion. For me, I've heard this like 1,000 different ways through the years. This government's going to do this. This it's the end of the Bitcoin. Oh, it's the biggest conglomeration of governments on earth. They're going to say we're going to do X, Y, and Z, and it amounts to little. And again, it's not. Plenty of people will share their information, and Bitcoin will still be traded. So there'll be the black market exchanges. There'll be the accepted. Again, if this even happens. So I know there's a lot of you out there who just are, I don't know, are gloomers who love to hear about this kind of thing. But dudes, we've been through this a lot. Of course, things are going to get more regulated on certain sides of things as we progress in time. But it's not killing Bitcoin, and they'll always be black market. And I'm not too worried about it. Christian,
want my opinion?
Oh yeah. Well, okay, yeah. Tina.
No, you can let Christian go first.
Well, I didn't know if Christian was about to say anything. Okay, Tina.
Okay, I'll give you my opinion. It's all about the size of Bitcoin. The most important thing right now is that Bitcoin be built to handle state attacks, but size is everything. So the bigger Bitcoin gets in overall size and market cap, the harder it is to constrain and control. So at some size, I don't know what that size is, $10 trillion market cap, $20 trillion market cap, $5 trillion market cap. Think of a riot with 10,000 people versus a riot with 1 million people. How do you arrest 1 million people? How do you stop something where effectively you can have an internal economy where people can basically satisfy most of their needs with Bitcoin, and you start to develop a circular economy? They don't really have to go outside of that economy. It becomes very difficult for states to enforce that because there will be players who say they thumb their nose at it. And again, if you have 1 million people rioting, 10 million people rioting, it's pretty hard to arrest 10 million people. You don't have enough people to do that. And it becomes a very hard battle for states to deal with this, and it's all about size.
Well, I think it actually gets worse, and I like the riot analogy because you're absolutely correct. Clearly, trying to arrest 1 million people, or even trying to contain 1 million people that are all in one geographic location, is difficult enough. But when my act of violence against the state as a rioter consists of me drinking a cup of tea in front of my computer in the panhandle of Texas, and I am one of hundreds of millions doing the rioting, I think that makes it even worse.
Absolutely.
All right. So there's your take, all you regulation people out there. Guy Bennett says, send $10, and he says, thank you, Guy, and thank you everyone who's contributed. A final thought on Libra. Facebook can keep your Libra if they don't like what you post. Yeah. They can never confiscate your Bitcoin. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And some people will learn that the hard way, and some people won't even care because they'll be like, "Ooh, I'm able to buy a big screen TV when I'm on Facebook." And so let them have the convenience. Some people will prefer convenience over freedom, and that's just the way of the world. Okay, we've reached the end of the show here, I think. But I want the guys to bring up subjects that were not brought up. I'll start with Christian. First of all, Christian, you got to talk about the event up there that's coming up. I know you're part of the event, but any other subject matters too. So the floor is yours.
Yeah. So thank you, Adam, for having me on the show. Always a pleasure to be on. One of my favorite panels to join on, and fantastic group. So thanks a lot. Bitcoin 2019 next week in San Francisco. I work for Bitcoin Magazine, and we are the company behind the event. I've been putting a ton of work in and are really honored. We're going to have over 1,500 Bitcoiners there, hopefully getting to 200 or sorry, 2,000. So I'm at CK_snarks. If you want a discounted ticket, very nice price, send me a DM. But we're trying to get as many Bitcoiners there. It's going to be an absolute rager. There's going to be 2 after parties after day 1, 2 after parties after day 2. There's a bunch of meetups happening. It's just going to be a lot of festivity, and this is definitely going to be an epicenter of activity. So very excited. Try to be there if you can. It's going to be great.
All right, now all these dudes are linked to below, so you'll easily be able to click on his Twitter, send him some DMs. Oh, he answers them. Trust me. Any other news? Anything else you wanted to share? Anything that you got left off the show?
Loving the price. Great show. Let's stop talking about Libra and focus about Bitcoin.
Yeah, man. You did the thing earlier this week when you blocked out all the Libra noise. I like that. I like it. It truly was crypto noise. But again, if you look even here in the chat, people are talking. I mean, it's a huge story when a huge corporation honors Bitcoin in this way by trying to make their own Bitcoin. We all know that Bitcoin is the next Bitcoin. And sure, Amazon will probably have their own Bitcoin soon enough too. And that'll be great too. It'll wake up all the normies. All right, Mr. Bennett, your conclusionary thoughts. Thank you. And thank you, Christian, for being on. Thank you, everyone, for being on.
I'm going to echo Christian. This is like, I'm now officially a 2-timer on your show. So this is the second time that I got to come back, or this is the first time I got to come back, and I really appreciate it. This is always, it was fun the first time, and it's just as fun this time. But I do want to end, what I'm saying is that I just saw this. Now, this was 6 hours ago, but I just saw it, I don't know, right before the show. Bloomberg Asia's tweet. ECB President Mario Draghi wins a standing ovation from EU leaders as he calls for additional monetary stimulus. So, yeah, I'm thinking like, okay, this like nobody's learned their lesson, and we're 10 years out.
Yeah, it's cyclical. They'll keep on printing it and let them. This is, and now Bitcoin is, many more people will understand, okay, I can get out of this system now. They're giving me a bunch of free money. Let me use their free money to buy the real thing. So I think it'll be even more noticeable this time around. Once they really start to get the inflation, the money printing going in by the Fed, by the ECB, by everybody, I think it'll really, and again, you see the price of Bitcoin is going up. The price of gold is even going up and stuff. So there are people already acting out on this news. So yeah, this is bad news for savers. If you value your wealth in fiat, you better learn to value your wealth in Bitcoin real soon, because these central banks, they're going to keep on printing. Tina, I'll let you have the final word here.
I just want to say thank you, Adam.
Well, thank
you.
It
was great being on with you guys. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And Adam, you are always a pleasure. You are a consummate gentleman, and I have to tell you something. There was a talk show commentator who I used to watch on financial channels, and he was always conducted himself very well. He was extremely respectful. I always thought very well of this man, and I didn't always agree with him, but I just thought very, very well of him. And I have to tell you something. In my opinion, you, whether you've intended to or not, have kind of modeled yourself on that. And I think it's just really excellent. You have a way about you which is very special. You are a gentleman. And you've got a great attitude and demeanor, and I think it speaks well of who you are as a man. And I think it serves you well in what you do. And I want to thank you, and thank you very much.
Well, thank you. I am flattered, coming from a man with such experience as you. It is a great honor to have this compliments put my way. Thank you, guys, and thanks for being on this. You guys. You bring your A game, and I bring the best guests in this space to this show. And I hope everybody enjoyed the show today. It was definitely a blast. I hope everyone has a strong hand this weekend, no matter what the roller coaster may bring. So again, thank you, guests. Thank you, people watching the show. That is This Week in Bitcoin. We're here every Friday. I do a new show every day that's not This Week in Bitcoin. And of course, Saturday is the Beyond Bitcoin show. So I'm Adam Meister, the Bitcoin Meister, the Disrupt Meister. Remember, subscribe to this channel, like this video, share this video, pound that like button, bang that bell button. Shabbat Shalom, and I'll see you guys tomorrow night. Have fun, everyone. Bye-bye.
See you.